MTG Burgeoning fans, YouTube viewers, welcome back to Sunday PHONday. If you are still part of the latter and wish to join the former, click that subscribe button now, and in so doing, you become eligible for so many of the channel's sweet reward series. In today's video, we continue with our current Morophon build, Budget Slivers. Hello and welcome back, burgeoning community. Here we are with another Sunday PHONday, and in today's video we are going to continue building our 5-color budget slivers with our namesake for the day as our general and commander. If you missed the first video of this series, you can click on the link below. It'll bring you right up to speed and let you know exactly where we are with this current deck building process. And in that first video, the MTG Burgeoning community was tasked with slimming down a bulk of 50 slivers, each of which were under $1. We needed to eliminate half of them to move forward in our deck building process, and the results are in. We're down from 50 to 25. So let's start with our first subset of creatures that made the cut. We're going to refer to these slivers as our boosters. Spectral Sliver is in. 2 and a black for a 2/2, and it gives all slivers tap 2 generic or colorless mana. And this creature gets +1/+1 till end of turn. It is a temporary boost, but it is still valuable, and it can, give our opponents a lot to think about during a combat phase. All right, so Spectral Sliver is in. Booster number 2, Cleaving Sliver is in. 3 and a red for a 2/2 body. Sliver creatures we control get +2/+0. Cleaving Sliver is in. Next up, of course, we had to have Predatory Sliver in, the third such sliver to give slivers +1/+1. This is following in its predecessor's footsteps of Sinew Sliver and Muscle Sliver, both of which were over $1 and not eligible for the first 50. And our last boosting sliver of this subset, he is a biggin. He is 3 Predatory Slivers in 1. He is, or she is, Megantic Sliver. 5 and a green. He's a 3. It's a 3/3, and sliver creatures we control get +3/+3. And those are our boost slivers. So now let's move on to a subset of slivers that are going to help us in combat. And for this particular set of slivers, we're looking at abilities that are going to help us to enhance our combat, making it easier to take out our opponents one by one. And the first sliver that fits that bill, Sentinel Sliver, giving all of our slivers vigilance. Extremely powerful, extremely important, particularly when we move to the next subset of slivers and talking about some special ability slivers. Shadow Sliver, 2 and a blue. All slivers have Shadow. Now, Shadow is a mechanic that first debuted all the way back in Tempest, so we're talking more than 23 years ago. And any creature that has Shadow can only be blocked by a creature with Shadow. And unfortunately, that means that our creatures are unable to block any of our opponent's creatures. So we have to be careful with that. It's a Shadow Sliver is a high-risk, high-reward creature to put into play, but the risk is worth it. Speaking of evasion, Winged Sliver is in. 1 and a blue, all slivers gain flying. Next up, the Frenzy Sliver made the chopping block and got off of it in one piece. So we got a 1/1 sliver for just 1 and a black. And all slivers have Frenzy 1. Now, Frenzy is a mechanic that was first introduced in Future Sight, and we have not seen it since. So Frenzy is Frenzy 1, for the purposes of the sliver build, is whenever a sliver attacks and isn't blocked, it gets +1/+0 until end of turn. So for our evasion slivers, like Shadow Sliver and Wing Sliver, if we have some creatures that our opponents can't block because they don't fly or have reach or have Shadow, I mean, honestly, how many times have you sat at the EDH commander table and witnessed an instance of Shadow take place in a game? Frenzy Sliver gives all of our unblocked slivers a nice +1/+0 boost. All right, so Frenzy Sliver is in. Combat Sliver number 5, Leeching Sliver, 1 in a black. Whenever a sliver we control attacks, defending player is going to lose 1 life. That's a 1/1 body, and anytime we attack one of our opponents with a sliver that has, with a sliver with Leeching Sliver in play, they're going to lose that life, baby. Next up, we have Belligerent Sliver, 2 in a red and a 2/2 body. Sliver creatures we control have Menace. That's right, this creature can't be blocked except by 2 or more creatures. So Belligerent Sliver's introduction into the Magic lore predates the keyword terming of Menace. And it will be a great way to give our slivers additional evasion. Next up, we got the Heart Sliver, 1 in a red. All slivers are unaffected by summoning sickness. Of course, this is a Tempest card, so, 23 plus years ago, before the creation of the word haste was around, for a creature to have haste, it was unaffected by summoning sickness. And giving all of our slivers haste is a nice thing for Heart Sliver to come by and do. Virulent Sliver is our next sliver, and this is going to add a potential win condition for our budget build. Again, going back to Future Sight, this is just a green to cast. It's a 1/1 body, and all slivers have Poisonous 1. For anyone who's unfamiliar with poison, or I'm sorry, let me reframe that. Everyone should be familiar with poison through the process of infect counters. However, this predates infect. So whenever a sliver deals combat damage to a player, that player gets a poison counter. A player with 10 or more poison counters on them, of course, will lose the game. It is important to mention, however, that it's not poison counter per point of combat damage. This is not infect. This is poisonous. So if a sliver slips in, if a 4/4 sliver slips in and deals combat damage to an opponent and has Poisonous 1, the defending player is going to get a poison counter, not 4. However, Virulent Sliver is under $1 and is still worth adding to this budget build as a potential win condition. All right, 2 more to go for our combat abilities. The next one is Striking Sliver. Just a red, 1/1, slivers we control have first strike. And lastly, going to Modern Horizons, we finish off this subset of slivers with Tempered Sliver. 2 in a green for a 2/2 body. Sliver creatures we control have, whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on it. So if we can get Tempered Sliver down in the early game before our opponents have established a board with blockers, then we can swing some of our slivers in to get some +1/+1 counters, make them bigger. Or if we have any of our number of evasion granting slivers, like the Belligerent Sliver or the Winged Sliver or the Shadow Sliver, having Tempered Sliver in play will be a great way to get those slivers bigger and bigger, making it easier for us to achieve our imminent victory. So that is the subset of combat ability slivers. So we got 1 batch left, and this is going to be our subset of slivers that are going to give our other slivers some great abilities. Not necessarily great from a combat perspective, but a great way to synergize our army, get some additional benefits off of a hive mind creature type. And the first one that we're going to show is Quilled Sliver. 1 in a white, all slivers have tap. This creature deals 1 damage to target attacking or blocking creature. So if we reflect back a moment, why Sentinel Sliver was the first sliver showcased in the 25 that made the cut, there's a reason for that, because Vigilance is going to be a very important part of this deck. With so many of these slivers that we're about to show having tap abilities, it's important to make sure that we can have Vigilance so that we can also attack and tap and pose a defensive threat in case our opponents have any, malice in their hearts to try to win their own game. I mean, come on, what's up with that? So Quilled Sliver is in as the first slot of special abilities. Next up, we have Mnemonic Sliver. Going back again to Tempest, we got 2 in a blue for a 2/2. Each sliver gains tap 2, sack this creature to draw a card. This is great insurance in case of spot removal or a board wipe. Being able to sacrifice our creatures to draw some cards if we have some mana available. That's a fantastic way to gain some additional value from creatures that are already heading towards the yard. And maybe we have a way in which to reduce that 2 casting cost. That possibility will come later in this sub-series of deck building around Morophon and our budget slivers. Next up, a sliver that I still can't believe was under $1 when we put the top 50 sliver video together last week. And that's Basil Sliver, baby. 2 and a black with a 2/2 body. All slivers have sacked this creature to add 2 black to our mana pool. Just amazing. I mean, I know we can't have Sliver Queen or Mana Echoes in this deck because that's just the budgetary constraints behind that kind of puts us into the corner of not allowing that to be an option. However, I do believe that down the road, we will include a couple of packages to help take advantage of Basil Sliver's ability to generate that mana. Basil Sliver is number 3. Next up, and not a coincidence that it's paired right after Basil Sliver, we have Dregscape Sliver. 1 in a black with a 2/2 body from Modern Horizons. This uncommon sliver gives each sliver card in our graveyard Unearth 2. Now, to have Unearth, we tap 2 and we return this card from our graveyard to the battlefield. It has haste. However, at the beginning of the next end step, or if it would leave the battlefield, we have to exile the creature, and we can only unearth as a sorcery. So there's definitely a lot of limitations and restrictions to the unearth mechanic. However, for the purposes of this sliver build, I think we're going to find a great deal of usage bringing those slivers back from the graveyard. More on that in the following videos. Continuing with the potential for a graveyard theme, we stick with Modern Horizons and we talk about Hollowhead Sliver. 2 and a red for a 2/2. Sliver creatures we control have tap, discard a card to draw a card. Preferably, I like this sliver. I like the fact that I can choose a card in my hand to get rid of that either is unneeded or unwanted at the time and get an additional option. So Hollowhead Sliver is definitely going to be in, and again, you're starting to see with the addition of Quilled Sliver and Hollowhead Sliver thus far, in addition to the next sliver, why Vigilance is going to be such an important part in this deck. Particularly because, number 6, Manaweth Sliver. This sliver is under $1. You've got to be kidding me. We'll take it. We'll take this every day of the week and twice on Friday Night Magics. So we got a Manaweth Sliver, 1 and a green on a 1/1. Sliver creatures we control have tap, add 1 mana of any color to our mana pool. So if we have our Sliver army and they're filled with Vigilance and we have some evasion, we send our army out. Second main phase, we can tap some slivers to cast some spells. Vigilance is key, folks. All right, next up we have Quick Sliver. That made the cut, baby. We may cast Quick Sliver anytime we could play an instant. Of course, this predates the flash keywording. And then any player may cast Sliver cards anytime they could play an instant. So this gives, Quick Sliver has flash and gives all Sliver creature cards in our hand flash. Next up, for the purposes of protection, we have Crypt Sliver. All slivers have tap, regenerate target sliver. 1 and a black for a 1/1. It's okay to include Crypt Sliver because we are not including Crystalline Sliver into this deck. Now, I also have a number of other Sliver decks where Crystalline Sliver and Crypt Sliver just do not get along because Crystalline Sliver gives all slivers Shroud, meaning that Crypt Sliver's ability to tap to regenerate target sliver just doesn't work. For the purposes of our deck, Crypt Sliver is a great card to include. All right, we're down to our last 3, which were the last 3 cards to make it into this 25 budget slivers. Well, the next one is Spiteful Sliver, going back again to Modern Horizons. 2 and a red for a 2/2. Sliver creatures we control have, whenever this creature is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to target player or planeswalker. Having Spiteful Sliver under our control really makes our opponent second guess whether they want to send in some attackers, and it really makes them second guess if they're thinking about casting spells like Blasphemous Act or Chandra's Ignition, Chain Reaction, Star of Extinction. A great play is to kind of have Spiteful Sliver in the hand with Quick Sliver on the battlefield. And as a nice little surprise, if anyone decides to be malicious enough to cast a board wipe in red, dealing direct damage, we throw the Spiteful Sliver out there and see if we can't wipe out a couple of players. All right, second to last card, we have Acidic Sliver going to Stronghold. Black and a red for a 2/2. Each sliver gains tap 2, sacrifice this creature, pretty much cast Shock. We can deal 2 damage to any target. Again, similar to Mnemonic Sliver, Acidic Sliver allows our slivers to avoid being exiled, avoid board wipes by getting some additional value out of them. Additionally, as I say additionally again and again and again, similar to Mnemonic Sliver, we may be able to find a way to reduce that cost of 2, maybe down to 1. More on that in future videos. And sliver number 25 to make the cut. You've met the first 2 dozen. Here is number 25 and the last one to make the cut from the original 25. And that's going to be Lava Belly Sliver. Staying with Modern Horizons, we got 1 red and a white and another 2/2. And sliver creatures we control have, when this creature enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to target player or planeswalker, and we gain 1 life. So we could look at Lava Belly Sliver as a potential win condition, particularly if we have a lot of slivers coming in and out of play, being returned to our hand, maybe coming from the graveyard, as we talked about earlier with the Dregscape Sliver and the Unearth mechanic. Lava Belly Sliver adds an additional way in which to drain our opponents down outside of combat and direct damage. Well, technically this is direct damage, but this is more of a draining effect. And that is Lava Belly Sliver. And there it is, folks. Those are the 25 slivers that made the cut. You can click on the link below to take you to the tappedout.net page, where you can see some explanations as to why the other 25 slivers did not make the cut. We're not going to get into that video today, just for the purposes of time. But you can click on the link below, and it'll take you right to the tappedout.net page, and you can have a little more detailed description about the slivers that made the cut and the slivers that did not. So as you look down at our mat here of our wonderful Sunday PHONday play mat with Morophon front and center. So we have our 25 slivers, and as of the recording of this video, the cumulative total value of these 25 slivers based on TCG player market price is just under $13. $12.92 total. So on average, each of these slivers cost about 51 to 52 cents. That's a great way to start this budget build, folks. We have a quarter of our deck done, the core of our slivers, and it doesn't even cost us 15 bucks. We're at $12.92. What a fantastic way to start off. So let's move on to the next facet of this deck building process and what may prove to be the most challenging. Pardon me. We're in a budget build. We're in 5 colors, so we're not running shocks, we're not running fetches. We are going to strive to put together as balanced as a mana base as we possibly can, considering we're 5 color budget. So now this is where the MTG Burgeoning community comes into play. In the comment section below, or on the tappedout.net page, leave some suggestions to some spells that we can use to help fix our mana, to smooth out our mana, to make sure that we have the lands in play that we need to cast any of these slivers throughout the entire game. Because we're in a budget build, it's going to be important that we pinch those pennies. So let's make sure that we put a line of demarcation for each one of these spells by saying no mana fixing spell should be more than $1. Let's follow the sliver script so far with the next subset of cards. No mana fixing spells over $1. Leave suggestions below in the comment section or over on the tappedout.net page. This is MTG Burgeoning, folks, and we are Sunday PHONdaying with Morophon the Boundless and Budget Slivers.